I've done a lot of reflecting in the last couple of weeks, and this journey that we've been on. Wow, this journey that we've been on. This story, it has to be true because it's so unbelievable that you could never think of a story like this. You could never think it up like that. You know, I never told you this. When they called me and said, Bob, we'd like you to take a look at Raleigh, I said, no. So they called me the next week and said, Bob, we'd really like you to take a look at Raleigh. I said, no. And they called me the third week. And they said, we are strongly urging you to take a look at Raleigh. And I said, no. And they called the fourth week. And I went, let me guess, Raleigh? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, we'll go take a look at it. How many of you were here at our interview? I'm just curious. Let me see your hands. Yeah, a couple. Not too many of you, all right? Part of that's because our church is strong. You know that? But we've had a great 9 years together. But when Tanika and I rolled in that first night, what I remember the grass outside was about this tall. Remember that? Wasn't getting mowed. I remember that there were holes in the drywall underneath the porch, and that there was drywall pieces that were hanging down. And that's what created it. I remember when I walked into this back wall, it's going to gross you out a little bit. The back wall had a black strip that ran all the way across the back of the church. From where the back row would sit and lean their head against the wall, and that one since it had been painted. And it's just like the church was just kind of at this low, kind of morally, encouragement level, and spiritually, it was just like, my first Sabbath, there were 125 people at church. That's not true, there were 150. Within about 4 weeks, we'd grown the church down to 125. Because you lose the people that were just kind of curious. You know? And so ministry started, and it started in earnest. And it was fun. And the Lord blessed, and good things started to happen. And people started to come. I've been here exactly 1 month when I did my first baby dedication. Where's the Matilda family? Where's Andy, my buddy? Want to hear? There he is. Raise your hand for me, buddy. You and I, we've got a special connection to you. You know that? Mama comes to me and says, I'd like for you to dedicate my son. I said, I'd like to dedicate your son. I said, now I understand that you're African. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have Africa Day. All of you Africans get to wear your African garb. And I had an ulterior motive. Here's my ulterior motive. I had African garb, and in Africa you don't wear a tie to church. It is a superior culture. Okay? And so I wore my Africa stuff, and they wore their Africa stuff. And during Andy's dedication, I had all of the Kenyans and all the Africans come up, and there were like 60 of them all the way across the platform. And they're wearing these bright, colorful, beautiful, it's just beautiful. And I'm standing here in the middle of them. I look like a marshmallow and a cup of chocolate. I bet you can't pick out the pastor. And I do this is my first baby dedication. And I do the dedication. It comes time for the prayer. And I prayed in Swahili. Yeah, that's an African. I already said that. And let me tell you, I don't know Swahili. But I wrote my prayer out ahead of time. I got somebody translated so I could pray in Swahili. And this was funny. With the Africans, like pastor speaks Swahili, it was like, whoa! All right, I could do no wrong. I knocked it out of the park. However, with all the white folks sitting out there, they didn't know what was going on. They thought I was speaking in tongues. I could actually hear them during the prayer. I could hear them going, you believe the confidence sends this guy? And it started this little tradition that whenever I do a baby dedication for a family of a different nationality, I would always try to pray in their native language. And that went really well for a couple of years. Until I did a Brazilian. Portuguese is hard. They say Portuguese is like Spanish. I can read Spanish. I can speak Spanish. I can't do Portuguese. Portuguese is hard. And I was really stressed out about the Portuguese. And so I practiced this prayer, and I practiced. And I wasn't feeling good about it. I was feeling insecure. Like, it's not going well. And so we got up there and did the prayer, and I kind of muddled my way through it, and I was not feeling good about it. And we had lunch that day over at Tanaka family's house. And we're over there at lunch, and I was like, pulled Eduardo aside. I'm like, Eduardo, listen, be honest with me. I'm the pastor. You can't lie to me. And it's the Sabbath, too, so that's like double whammy. Tell me, how do I do on prayer? Like, Pastor Bob, upstairs with all the kids, and I bumped into Lucas. And I asked the same question. Lucas is like, don't you ever, ever, ever do that again. Slaughtered my mother tongue. I'm embarrassed to be a Brazilian because trust the kids to be brutally honest. Oh man. Do you remember how ugly this stage was 9 years ago? Those of you who are a long timer, I know like half of our church is new. I'm doing ancient history here. The carpet was red, and it was like 150 years old. Right? And then the church was institutional white. And these screens weren't here. And these walls used to come all the way over to here. And then there was a big column that stuck out right here on each side. And you couldn't even see a baptism if you were on the wings. And so one day we had a building committee here, and we were like, we need to open this up, and we need to get rid of the columns, and we need to build something, and we need to get some color, and we're going to make this place beautiful. And we're standing here looking at this, coming up with all these great ideas, and all of a sudden we realized that we didn't know what we were talking about. And someone goes, we need an architect. Well, incidentally, we just had 2 architects move for our church that nobody had really met yet. They were this young unmarried couple named Liz and Daryl. And I knew them, but no one else knew them. And incidentally, this was at about 5:55 in the evening, and I'm meeting with the building committee here on the stage. And I actually have an appointment with Daryl and Liz at 6 o'clock to talk about the wedding. And so someone says, we need an architect. We need to get an architect in here. And I whipped out my phone, and I went, where are you guys at? They said, 5 minutes. I said, come in the sanctuary and see me here. They said, okay. And I hung up the phone. I said, I'll have you 2 architects in 5 minutes. Who's your dad? And the building committee looked at me and they were like, who is that guy? We love the new pastor. He rocks. Daryl and Liz, where you guys at? You guys made me look good that day. Okay? I'm still riding on that wave. You guys made me look so good. I remember so many relationships in this church. I remember one Saturday night after a whole full day of ministry, and you're just exhausted. It's like 9:45. You're trying to get people out of church and turn out the lights. People just want to talk. It's like, I just want to go home and rest. And I bumped into this guy sitting in the lawn, Darius Sloan. And we start talking about fishing. Gary's over here. I bumped into him there. All the guys are looking in the lobby. We started talking about fishing. He's like, well, you know, the crappie are running. We could go. I said, don't tease me. He said, we could go. He said, if only we had a boat, I would go right now. I said, Gary, don't tease me. Because I have a boat, and now you're going fishing. And so in about 45 minutes, he was in my driveway, and I had run home and changed into my dingy Southern boy clothes. And I remember Derry got out of his car, and he looked at me, and he kind of looked me up and down, you know, like combat fatigues and a dirty old shirt, and a hat that looks like it came off a homeless guy. And Derry, and he looks at me, and he's like, you could just see the wheels turning. He's like, I didn't really know you like I thought you did. I always thought you were like this clean-cut pastor. And he was thinking he was going to have to bait my hook and stuff. I think I actually caught more fish than Derry that night. Okay? It's not going away. Just let me have it. It's not going away. Okay? Give me a little pastoral license. I can massage it and fudge with it a little bit. I remember some really funny sermons that I preached in this church. Remember Easter narratives? My favorite was the prisoner. That was 100-year-old Paul. And for those of you, I've got these pictures on my phone. I can show you at lunch if you want to see them. I had a professional makeup artist show up at my house on Saturday morning and do up my face. And she brought me a nose, like a big swollen alcoholic's nose. And she brought me a wart about that big, and she put it right here. And she brought me a wig, this scraggly old long-haired gray wig, and she put a beard on me. And I looked like I was 165 years old. And then I dressed up in prison clothes. I'm talking about the jumpsuit, the orange jumpsuit, and the white socks, and the little prison slippers. And I had a police officer bring me into the church. And they opened the back doors, and I'm down hand and foot, and I come walking down the middle of the aisle, in the middle of church. I kind of did a grand entrance. And I got to tell you what I remember about that. Poor Stephen McLeod. We just ordained him as an elder. Right? And he's up here getting ready to have the prayer. He's doing the welcome. He's getting ready to have the prayer. And he's up here talking, and he's preaching, and he's in the Spirit. And all of a sudden I start walking, and he sees me, and he's up here talking, and he sees me. Well, we're glad everybody's here. And he just completely lost his core. He just completely lost it. He forgot what he was saying at all. And I want, now this is a moment of truth. I want to honestly, how many of you knew it was me before I started speaking? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, no, my family, right? Chrissy, that is not true. You're raising your hand. Derry told you. Yeah, Chrissy's like, oh, that's so wonderful. They let the prismatic in the church. Easter. And Derry leans over and goes, that's Bob. And I'm like, dude, how did you know? He's like, dude, you can't hide the belly behind a bunch of church. The face was old, but the belly was still there. I'm like, like you anymore. It's a great conversation. Do you remember McChurch? Do you remember the McDonald's song? I preached a sermon called McChurch, and I was talking about how God lays out a banquet table for us. And many of us treat God like a fast food God. We hit the drive-thru really fast. And we bounce off God. And God doesn't want to do that. He wants a banquet table. He wants us in His home. He wants us to invite us. He wants to fellowship with us. In the Middle Eastern culture, meal was a gesture of intimacy. And we're running through the fast food when God has a banquet prepared. Well, one of the things I did to illustrate my sermon is that morning I came walking into church late with a bag of McDonald's. Drive-through. And I walked right up here in front of you all, and I sat down and I started eating my breakfast. And I got out my egg muffin and I laid it there, and I got out my orange juice and I had it here. And I got out some of those little potato things. Yeah, you guys getting hungry? It's about lunchtime. And I was squirting ketchup and I was eating it, and the church was really quiet. Really, I couldn't tell if you wanted some or if you were mad at me. And then it happened. I looked down on that side. You know where this is going, don't you? I looked down on that second pew right there, where this lady always sits. Her name is Eva. And I have to tell you what Eva was doing. Eva was sitting like this. And she dropped her chin like this. And she was looking at me with her eyes like this. And when I looked down and saw Eva, let me tell you what she did. She goes like this. And I have to tell you that on the inside, in my emotional world, I just withered. Fuck, I am in so much trouble. I don't ever want Eva to look at me that way again. I've always been nice to you, Eva, because of that. Like, you scared me to death. And later on in the sermon, she got it. She was happy and nice. And I was like, you know? I remember the stewardship campaign that we did. Wow, enjoying. I will tell you that in my 9 years here, that was probably my happiest time. There was something special and uniquely spiritual that took place in this church during that stewardship campaign. I personally have never been around a church and around a community of people that were at such a place of unity and such a place of togetherness and such a place of, that's the coordinates, set your compass, let's go take the hill, God is with us. There was just something special and something uniquely spiritual that took place. I remember the sermons that I preached and how there was just this momentum that we seemed to gather as we collected into that event. And I so long for the church to just be in that place all the time. To be in that place of togetherness and unity. None of us is as smart as all of us. And to be in that place where we become stronger as we press together and press together. Man, we really did it during those months. We did that so well. And we honored the Lord so well. I remember the ribbon cutting that we had after it's kind of the conclusion of the stewardship campaign, or about that time. The ark was done. We got our CO, our certificate of occupancy. We came and cleaned it at a big work bee that everybody came to. But we didn't want to use it yet because we wanted to honor the Lord. So we waited for a Sabbath. We put these ribbons up around the brick homes. And after church, we all went out. It was a beautiful day. It was like today. It was summer. It was balmy. And the weather was perfect. The sky was blue. And we went out there, and it seems like we sang a song and we prayed. And we cut the ribbons. And then we walked into that new building the Lord had given us. It was like the children of Israel marching across the Jordan River for the first time to that goodly land of milk and honey that God promised. There was just this feeling of, we're honoring the Lord. We're following the Lord. We are completely sold out. We are all in with this thing. And look what God has done. And we got to do it together. Wow. Those were joyous times. Joyous, joyous times that got us. Some weeks ago, when I interviewed up at the New England Conference, they asked me, they said, of your 9 years in your last church, what are you the most proud of? It took me about this long to think of it. Unity in the community. This thing that we've done in this church, you gave the leadership then. You started it. You did it. We were in this dual conference ministry, and you heard the elder talk about these different conferences that overlap the same geographical ministry territory. We did a dual conference ministry, and out of that came this event called Unity in the Community. We had Barry Black in here. We had 1,300 people in this campus. That was crazy. Man, I'm glad the fire marshal wasn't here. We'd been in so much trouble. I'd have still been in jail. And we did it over and over again. And people came. There was love and there was joy. And it wasn't just a fancy name, Unity in the Community. We actually had unity in the community. Because that's what heaven's going to be like. And we started to practice it now. And we weren't just talking about it, we were just doing lip service. We were actually doing it together. Man, I hope you continue to do that. Man, I hope you continue to do that. Let me tell you this. We've got Jan Paulson scheduled. He's our newly retired general conference president. He just retired 2 summers ago. World leader of the Adventist Church. We've got him scheduled to be here. Unity is scheduled for October. I confirmed with him last week that he still plans to come. So unity's not about me. Unity's bigger than me. I hope you continue with that. I'm in pastoral transition. The big church up in Durham, Emmanuel Temple, they're also in pastoral transition. Folks, let me give you a charge. As church members, you need to rise up and say, this we will do. This we will do. And when the new pastors come on board, you need to let them know, we follow your leadership, but this we will do. We want to do that. Because that one's important to this community. And I hope that you keep that one going. I remember the Clues A series. Remember all the baptisms that final Sabbath? We baptized like 50, 60 people in a single day. Today was nothing. Today was light work. It was just playing with you up there. But on that Sabbath, I had webbed feet. I was growing fingers by the time we got over there. It was just so happy. That was the first thing that we did in the Ark. Our first program in the Ark was to stand up and preach the gospel. You remember that? Man, we felt good about that. We didn't care that it was a gymnasium. We made it a sanctuary first, and we put a pulpit there, and we preached the gospel, and we preached it hard, and sinners came to Christ. And then we brought in that portable baptistry, and we just baptized just over and over and over again. Collectively, together, as soldiers of promise. Remember those days? Easter pageants. Wow. Wow. The year that Brad was Jesus? Huh? 300 and something people in here a night, 2-3 nights in a row. And the tears that we cried. What a privilege was ours to know him and to witness his faith in God. And at a time when others would have said, why me? Remember what Brad said? He said, why not me? It's okay. The Lord knows. I've given him my heart. I've given him my life. It's his. He can do with it as he will. Perhaps I will have a stronger witness for the kingdom in my death than I would have had in my life. It's okay. And we would sit with Brad, and we would feel bad, and we would be cheering us up. It's amazing. morning, I got the call from Christy. It was like 6 in the morning. She said, Brad just passed away. I said, I'm on my way. On my way there, I called Lee Andrew. Brad just passed away. I'm on my way. He said, me too. He lived very close to them. He's very close to that family. By the time we got there, the living room was crowded with his family and close friends. His wife's close friends. They're all Southern Baptist, rural Baptist church forever. And we've literally been in the room for about 2 minutes. Lee, where are you at? No? We've been in the room for like 2 minutes. Remember this? 2 minutes. I am pastor. This is Lee. He's one of our elders. I was Brad's pastor. Blah, blah, blah. We're all friends. We've been in the room 2 minutes, and this chick clears her throat and says, Pastor, I just have one question. Where is Brad right now? And I looked over at Lee. I was like, Lee, you're an elder in training. You want this one back? And Lee's looking at me with this. No, don't do that. Don't. Stop looking at me. Don't look at me. And then the Lord gave it to me. In that moment, the Lord gave it to me. What is it Jesus says? Take no thought for the thing that you'll save, because in the hour when you must save it will be given to you. The Lord gave it to me. Let me tell you what He gave me. Instead of denominational infighting and doctrinal this and that, arguing about soul sleep and all the rest, the Lord gave it to me. This is what I said. Let me tell you what Brad believed. Because who's going to argue with the dead guy? And then let me tell you why Brad believed that. And I pulled out my Bible. And it was okay. It went okay. It was polite, it was appropriate, it was professional, but it was true to our faith. It was true to our faith. God gave us this wonderful witnessing opportunity. And I'm sitting here giving this Bible study to all these Baptists, and I'm thinking back on what Brad said. Perhaps in my death, I will have a greater influence than I would have had in my life. Amen. And I thought, wow, that's spiritual. It's deep. It's good stuff. Almost a quarter of my career has been here in this church. I baptized all 3 of my children here in this town. That makes you so precious to us in the church. You are so precious to us. We will look back on this place and call it home. For many, many years to come, we will look back on this place and call it home. 3 things this morning. Reflections, warnings, and encouragements. Let's talk about number 2, warnings. Power grabs frequently happen in churches at times of pastoral transition. Be careful of those. Be careful when they start to happen. Be a part of elevating your church to a higher and a holier place. And be careful to keep your contribution to your church focused on the kingdom of God and on what God is doing and on what God wants to accomplish to expand His kingdom. Be careful not to talk constantly in meetings, or to talk on top of others, or to talk down to others. If you sense in yourself a need to kind of control things, it probably reveals that there's an agenda taking place in your heart, which is not the best. That's not the spirit. Secondly, be careful of those who claim to know lots of people in high places. They're always dropping names, people that they've known for 30 years, work in important offices in denominational structure. Be careful when someone wants to hinge an entire argument on a single line of North American division policy, especially when that, quote, positions them for power. Almost every time someone hangs an entire argument on a single line of policy, they're quoting it out of context, and that's suspect, because it usually positions them for power. Third, watch out for those who have consulted with the experts and the authorities in their final field, in their particular field. And now this is what you have to do because I consulted with an expert. Be careful of that. If someone calls you and says, I called the NAD and this is what they said, let me tell you how to handle that. You pick up the phone and you call the NAD. They work for you. That's a denominational structure for those of you guys who don't know. They work for you and they'll take your call. And just kind of verify the details of the phone call yourself. Be careful of those that would try to end the discussion or end the natural work of a committee, because I have an outside expert that you don't know about, don't have access to, and this is what they said we have to do, so now the discussion is over. Just be careful. Be advised and be wise about those type of things. Lastly, be careful of the spirit of gossip that from time to time wants to cycle through a congregation. And that's unfortunate because gossip destroys relationships. And some relationships that have been in place for a very long time, that are deeply rooted in loving relationships, they can be devastated quite by thoughtless words, by thoughtless actions. Remember what the wise man Solomon says, that without wood, a fire goes out. That's what he says in Proverbs. Be one of the people in this church that doesn't run around stoking fires and throwing wood on fires. That's one of the things that I have appreciated most about you. I go to workers' meetings, pastors' meetings, professional meetings, and I listen to pastors complain about their churches. And many times I just politely back out of the discussion because they're going to say, yeah, did you deal with that too, Bob? And I'm going to be embarrassed for them when I say, no, I don't. My church just doesn't do that. And I've been able to bear that type of a witness and that type of a testimony about you as a church for years. If and when gossip starts, let me tell you how to handle it. You're standing out here in the lobby, and someone starts with, did you hear about, and blah, 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 and da, 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 and did you know? Here's what you do. Don't be nasty. Don't be mean-spirited. Don't be sarcastic. Don't ruin the relationship. This is the body of Christ. But just politely excuse yourself. If your spouse comes home from a meeting talking about stuff they shouldn't be talking about, politely just hold up your hand and say, sweetheart, I'm not part of that solution. I'm not part of that problem. And let's just don't go there. You see, that type of influence, it elevates, it ennobles, and it lifts the whole congregation. When you say that, you have an influence on people for good and in a positive way. You have a wonderful influence on people. And it ripples much farther than what you realize. Just like when you do the opposite, you have a negative influence that ripples much further than you realize. So choose the positive and choose to obey Solomon's words. Thirdly, encouragements. Oh, so much I could say. Number one, you have a great head elder in this church. You do. It gives me joy to know that he's at the helm during his pastoral transition. That gives me joy. You know, as a pastor, I've been here for 9 years, and your spiritual leader, I care deeply about you. I love you deeply. There was a story in every single pew of this church. There's a significant story for me. So when I leave, I'm kind of, you know, and you've got to discipline yourself that when you leave, you got to leave. You don't control it. The Lord's in control. I had to remind myself of all that. It just gives me joy to know that Tim is at the helm, and he deserves your confidence, and he deserves your support. He certainly has mine. He has had mine, and he'll continue to have it. He's got good people around him holding his arms up. He's got good people that support him and encourage him. The Graves, Greg and Judy, Eduardo, Sergio, Wiz, Stephen. These are people that love you and they will take good care of you. They are wise. They have your best interest at heart. Next, I want to encourage you to love the new guy. Love the new guy when he gets here. Whoever my pastoral replacement is. And some of you, you're close to me, and you have a strong attachment to me and I to you. And it's almost like you can't even hardly make the transition in your head. Let me remind you of something, okay? When I interviewed here, you didn't really want me. All right? Let me just remind you, so let's go back to this page in history. Now, that wasn't about me. It was that you wanted someone else, right? That's okay to say. We know that's true. It's okay. And that's okay. It wasn't about not wanting me, but you weren't getting what you wanted. And it took us a little while to figure our relationship out and get introduced to each other and get connected. That's okay. That's okay. Love the new guy when he comes. If God has called me to go, and God has called me to go, God has called me to this new position, then what else has God called? He has called a new person to come. God will call someone to be your pastor. And it is in God's plan, in His care and keeping of you, it is God's plan that that person would come. And for you to resist that would be for you to step outside of God's perfect will for you. So this is okay, what's happening here. It's hard. It's difficult. It's tearful. For both of us. But it's okay. Our God knows what He is doing, and He has you in the palm of His hand. He has the best intent toward you that is even possible. Our conference cares very much about you in this church, and they want to be right by you. They have assured me of that several different times as we've talked about pastoral transition. If you would embrace Him and love Him and love His family, and give them your loyalty, I would count that a personal favor. And I would feel that you have honored me in a significant way to do that for this person. Next, I want to encourage you to be faithful in every area of your life, including stewardship. This church has an economic reality that it needs to deal with. And that's the debt burden that we hold on the building next to it. And the church needs to begin a round of discussions, and a round of discussions have already begun about how to handle that debt burden and how to collect, how to move back to that place of collective group think and that place of collective management of that particular challenge. There needs to be some significant discussion in the church about stewardship and about faithfulness and about getting that debt retired so that you can go and do all the things that God has called you to do. Think about this. Think about when that mortgage is retired. Think about what you will be able to do. People, the sky's the limit. The stars are the limit. This campus, these facilities, and your good hearts, wow, you can do wonderful, wonderful things in training for God. But that's one of the next big tasks that probably needs to be accomplished here on this campus. Be faithful. Be faithful to the Lord. There is an important business meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I wish you all would come. If you're one of the people that we haven't seen in a long time, and you're kind of here in the church, you're kind of in and out occasionally, maybe you haven't been to a business meeting in 40 years. I wish you would come tomorrow. And I wish you would participate in the discussion and listen to the discussion and be a contributor to the discussion and a contributor to the solutions that are going to be talked about tomorrow. It's an important meeting. I'm not going to be here. Today's my last day. Right? But I want you to come, and I want you to support that. Stand behind your head over your church leadership. Last encouragement. I want to encourage you to stubbornly cling to Jesus. Never let it go. Do not be discouraged by petty politics or financial challenges, the people that may disappoint you, the people that may come and go in the church. This church belongs to Jesus, and He will see it through. It will prosper because it is His church, and He has promised that He will never leave you or forsake you. He knows what He is doing. He is in charge, and His timing is always perfect. I encourage you to remember that. When you don't remember that, you are prone to discouragement. When you don't remember that, you start to develop a horizontal visual focus where you start to spend too much time looking at people and thinking about other people and worrying about other people and worrying about what they're doing and worrying about what they're not doing, I want to tell you that is a dead-end road. That is a dead-end road for you. Anytime you do that, you're prone to discouragement and you're prone to getting sidetracked. People have often asked me how I handle all the negative stuff and how I put up with politics and pettiness and unkind people and mean people and mostly mature people and blah, blah, blah. And most of the time whenever I have that conversation, then they jettison right into a story of some horrible thing that someone has said about me or some horrible way that people have treated me. And you know what I usually do? I usually do what I've already told you to do. I usually go, whoa, stop, time out, whoa. I don't want to hear it. There's no value in it. There's no blessing in it. It would just discourage and it would tear down and it would sap my emotional energy and it would sap my spiritual strength. And Satan wins. He gets sidetracked and he wins. You see, when I say cling to Jesus, what I'm talking about is you pay attention to him, you focus on him, you do what he has called you to do, and you do that regardless of what's taking place around you. There's this thing that goes on in this church where there's this group of people that aren't going to give because I don't like what they're doing with the money. Folks, it's wrong. It's wrong. I don't care who's doing with the money. When you give, that's between you and God. You be faithful to the Lord. That is a pathetic excuse not to be faithful to the Lord. And I hear that every time we talk about money, and it just pains my heart. That's a pathetic excuse for not being faithful to the Lord. But when you put it in the context of, I'm looking horizontally, I'm paying attention to this, to that, to her, to him, this process, blah, 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 and all this third dimension finite stuff. No. Cling to Jesus. Vertical focus. Lord, how can I be faithful to you? What do you want me to do? How can I honor you? Lord, how do I give you joy in this moment? And then you don't become as concerned about what's going on over here and over there and over there. And your heart just gets flooded with joy because you're doing what God has called you to do. You're being faithful to the Lord. You are positioning yourself to hear these words, well done. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Oh, how I want that for you. How my heart just breaks for you to have that experience. And do you know how liberating that is? Because you don't get tangled up in all the nonsense to the left and the right, and all the pitfalls, and all the petty relational blah, blah, blah that goes on. You get to be liberated from that. You get to be free from that. You can be in the midst of a storm, and you can just be sailing, gliding. Everything rages around you. You're like, we're good. Look at Jesus. Jesus has got us on course. We're on track. He's our rock. He's our strength. He's our high tower. He's the cleft in the rock. The Bible talks about how he's like this mother bird that spreads out her wings and covers her chicks. When she protects them, she keeps them warm. She pulls them in close to the soft coat of plumage, close enough that they can hear the mother's heartbeat, they can hear her life. It doesn't matter if there's a storm raging outside. I'm with Jesus. I'm good. I'm good. I want to share this verse with you. It's become a life verse for me in recent weeks. I may have shared this a couple of weeks ago. I know I did it first service. I don't know if I did here. Psalm 91. Oh, he who dwells in the secret place the Most High. We always spend time there. We talk about 1,000 may fall on this side, and the angels shall guard you. Let me give you this choice. The last three verses. In the last three verses, there's a transition in the chapter. The first part of the chapter, it's a human being speaking, talking about his relationship to God. But in the last three verses, there's a change in the speaker. In the last three verses, it's God who starts to speak. And this is what God says about you. Oh, listen, this is so good. God is speaking. And he says, because he has set his love upon me, therefore, I will deliver him. You're them. Because you have set your love upon him, therefore, God says, I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. He shall call upon me. I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. And with long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. context of Psalm 91 is not good. Things are not going good for the psalmist when he writes Psalm 91 as far as what's taking place on the outside. But in the inner world, the inner spiritual world of his heart, and the dialogue of his heart, and his inner emotional dialogue, and his relationship with Christ, he's being protected. He's being shielded. He's being lifted up. He's being set up on a high place. He's being delivered. He has known the Lord's name. He's delivered from trouble. He'll be honored with a long life. He'll be satisfied and shown the Lord's salvation. Cling to Jesus. Make him the focus of your heart, the focus of each day. Make it your daily goal to honor him, to serve him, to make him happy. Live your life in a way that honors the Lord, and you will dodge the pitfalls that tangle so many people up and lead them right out of the church. I don't want that for you. I want the very, very best for you as an individual and for your family and for this entire church family. This is what Kyle Eidelman says. He says, Jesus was never interested in having fans. When he defines what kind of relationship he wants, enthusiastic admirer is not one of the options. My concern is that many of the churches of America have gone from being sanctuaries to becoming stadiums. And every week all the fans file into the stadium where they cheer for Jesus, but they have no interest in truly following him. The biggest threat to the church today is fans who call themselves Christians but aren't actually interested in following Christ. They want to be close to Jesus, close enough to get all the benefits, but not so close that it requires anything. So don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be a fan. Be a follower. A truly converted, deeply committed, ministry-involved, spiritual gift-using, Jesus-loving follower of Christ. And as you do that, I will look forward to dancing with you on the sea of glass one day soon. Thank you for letting me be your pastor. Let's pray. God, I pray one final prayer of blessing upon this dear, wonderful congregation. And Lord, I pray it in His